back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And I'm here with somebody who I've had so much respect for through his career. In fact, we were just talking off camera, and this man is one of the reasons why I got into close-up magic. And I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later on. But he's a phenomenally successful magician, beyond just a magician, an entrepreneur, a business person, and just an all-round nice guy. I am, of course, talking about Chris Dugdale. How are you doing, Chris?
Thank you very much. Thanks for that introduction. You made me blush.
It's true. It's true. I mean, you have had a career, and we're going to talk all about it, but you've had a career and you're at a position right now in terms of success that most magicians can only dream of. And you've done so well and done so much throughout your career.
That's really kind of you to say, and I love what I do. And as we'll discover in our chat together, it's been and continues to be the most incredible journey. I always say to everyone, if I was the richest man in the world, it would not have opened up the doors that magic has.
That's great. You know, that is absolutely fantastic. And it's so true. And one of the things, before we start looking at your career, one of the things that I've always noticed about you, every time I've seen you speak, every time I've seen you talk, you've always come across as so passionate about magic. There's some people that get to a certain level where they're because you're doing stuff beyond magic now. You're speaking and you're keynoting and you're doing so many things. And when some people get to that position, it's almost like they turn their back on magic and kind of go, well, okay, that's got me to where I am, but I don't need that anymore. But you're always so passionate about magic as an art form. It's so amazing to see.
Thank you. I genuinely love it. And I always perform my every gig as if it was the last gig I was doing on planet Earth. You know, and I think if everyone can hold that in their passion, in their being, and give that to the audience every single time, the audience feels it. The audience feel your energy, and you can give them an amazing gift. But the moment you start becoming complacent is the moment you lose the game. And I saw Siegfried and Roy, I think 3 times their show. The first time was amazing. The second time was absolutely terrible. They were just walking through it, literally on the mark, stony face, no expression, no passion. And they obviously got a bad bollocking for it, because the third time was fantastic.
Wow. That actually says an awful lot. But for people that don't know who you are, Chris, I want to start at the very beginning. And I want to find out about you and how you got into magic. So can you tell me what your origin story was? So how did you get into this art form that you love so much? When did that happen?
So I've got a rather unusual beginning. I was born in France, actually in Paris, and then raised just west of London. And like everyone, I got the proverbial magic kit, was obsessed with it. I loved tennis, martial arts, music, but this was the one thing that really stuck. And I just sat down in front of my parents one day and I said, I am going to go around the world performing close-up magic to the richest and the most famous people on the planet. And my dad just looked at me and he said, go for it. Now, I lost my dad 10 years ago. It was the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life. You know, it changed me as a person. It's changed my whole outlook on life and about what we do for a craft. But I will never forget, every single night as a little boy, he'd put me to bed and he'd say, the last words I heard every single day were, there's no such word as can't. And he would support me, and my mum would support me, whatever we wanted to do. Now, if we wanted to be a dustman, you know, that's not obviously their desire for their kid, but they would respect that and they would give us their blessing, if you like. But be happy, be healthy, earn enough money, and you are a rich man. If you have your health, you are a rich man. And that is, I guess, the biggest lesson I've learned over the last 10 years.
And you know what? That's so lovely to hear, because you hear so many stories in magic. And I've got a similar story where your parents are almost disappointed. Oh, when are you going to get a proper job? My dad passed away 10 years ago as well. And right up until the day that he passed away, he was like, when are you going to give up this magic stuff and get a proper job? So it's so great to hear that you've come from an upbringing where they were supporting and encouraging, you know, your love for magic. That's great.
And it's really important, I think, Craig. You know, it's really important to support your kids, because life at the end of the day is about, in my opinion, it's about being kind. It's about being bloody good at what you do. And it's about working 10 times harder than you ever dreamt you'd have to. Because let's be honest, let's be frank, let's cut to the chase. Let's look at our business. Who's really successful? It's the hardest working people.
For sure. Absolutely, 100%.
It's not rocket science. It's air miles, it's effort, it's sweat, it's guts, it's tears, it's going the extra mile when everyone else has had enough. What are you prepared to do? Where are you prepared to go? How far are you prepared to push yourself outside of your comfort zone to achieve your dreams and your goals? And, you know, that is hugely sort of motivating talk, but I live by what I say, and I do it every single day.
And you know what? I can tell that. And I want to talk more about that in a minute. But let's talk about success. You have become very successful, as I said at the beginning. Was there a period of time where you had a proper job, or did you go straight from education into performing?
So my education is psychology. I got a degree in psychology, which we'll talk about later, from an amazing man at the Leicester University called Dr. Julian Boone. And for those of you who don't know who he is, he's basically the leading profiler in the UK. So he's an incredibly interesting person, and he would turn up to lectures in a pink Rolls Royce. He would often stop the lecture halfway through, take us down the pub on his dime, and we'd basically sit and get pissed with him. And he was by far my favorite lecturer in the world. And then it struck me as an adult, maybe he learned more about his students in 2 hours down the pub than every other lecturer did in 3 or 4 years. You know, he's a clever man, and he's sussing you out. So bottom line is that I learned a lot about the mind and the way we function from that man, Dr. Boone. And for those of you that may recognize his surname, he is in fact the heir to the Mills and Boone literary fortune, you know, the romantic novels. But he kind of, hence the pink Rolls Royce, but he kind of not turned his back on that, but he followed his passion, which was psychology. And I will be forever grateful to that man, because he definitely changed my life.
And do you find that a degree and a background in psychology helps you as a performer?
100%. We're in the people business. You know, that's what we're in. We're in the people business. And I think what I want to say early on in this interview is a huge difference between magic for magicians and magic for the lay public. And I respect both, but I think you have to understand from the outset what it is you want to achieve and for whom, because they are very different art forms. That you could almost put them as completely different art forms, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So you've got your degree in psychology. Did you then go straight into magic?
I was always doing magic. I almost got thrown out of university 3 times. And once I had to write a written apology, stick it on the wall, then give a speech. You know, I was that close to getting thrown out. And then I was given this gap year in Strasbourg, and I was dating this really nice girl at the time. And I went out there for 2 days, and I was meant to spend a year there. And I literally got on a bus and spent the whole year with her back in England. Now, of course, this was strictly against the rules. And back in the day, all we had was fax machines. So luckily enough, I'd fax proofed my ticket and the dates of the ticket for a year in between. And then I just basically made up what I did for a year. So if any of my lecturers are watching me right now, I'm sorry. But on the day of graduation, they came up to me, and they came up to my mum and dad. And they said, "We almost didn't give you your degree, Mr. Dugdale. We didn't think you were really in Strasbourg." And I'm like, yeah. So that was a pretty low point in my life, but also the girl was worth it. You know, she was very nice. So moving on, I almost got thrown out for doing magic. I had a job as a waiter in the Holiday Inn. I got fired. Along with all my colleagues, for teaching a bunch of Chinese businessmen how to order a full English breakfast with expletives. So they go along the buffet, and we taught them, you know, this is whatever, and they do it at the end, and they'd order this full English breakfast with expletives, thinking that was the proper name. Unfortunately, the manager overheard and fired us all on the spot. So the day we left, I ordered 150 full English breakfasts for everyone in that restaurant, and we walked out into the sunrise, I beg your pardon. And it was like something out of a Western. It was brilliant.
That's great. That's awesome.
So yeah, I've always done magic. Started doing kids shows, loved it. But, you know, I was kind of reckless back in those days. I'd often turn up with the worst for wears, and sometimes I'd have to go and excuse myself because of the night before. I was actually being sick in the toilet, and then coming back to finish off Mr. Teddy Goes to the Farm or whatever it was. And it was absolutely terrible looking back. And, you know, but you know, you live and you learn. And I learned a lot from doing kids shows. You know, I'm sure you'll agree, if you can make a child laugh and a child applaud, and a group of children, you can learn many things that you can then transfer into the adult market for sure.
Oh, 100%, absolutely. Um, but obviously, early on in your career, you became known as a close-up magician.
Mhm.
The close-up magician. Like, you were the guy that everyone talked about. You were at the very, very top. People would try and book Chris Dugdale, and if not, it would go down to somebody else. What I suppose my question is, and then you literally wrote the book on close-up success, which is what I alluded to earlier on, and we'll get to
Yeah,
that in a
with
minute.
Phil J. I co-authored it with Phil, yeah.
With Phil, yeah. So my question to you is, for people that are watching this, that are wanting to become super successful close-up magicians, what's the secret? Yeah, is there any advice that you can actually give?
Yeah,
What
try
did
and
you
be
go through in your career?
absolutely. Try and be authentically you. You never fail. You either succeed or you learn a lesson. And if you can always learn something from every situation, no matter how bad, you will get better. But try not to do the same thing as everyone else is doing. They want to book Craig Petty. The moment they want to book Craig Petty or Chris Dugdale as opposed to a magician, that's when you can really become quote unquote successful. Now, success has many different meanings for different people, and it's how you define it. For some people, it's just money. It's never been about that for me. Yeah, sure, I love making lots of money like everyone else, but that's never been my core passion, my core desire. That's a nice sort of secondary effect, if you like. But be authentically you. Craig Pettify your magic, Chris Dugdale your magic, so that when they make that call, it's you that they want, because it's at that point you can charge whatever you want and whatever they are willing to pay you, as opposed to the generic market rate being here for a close-up magician. If you start playing this game, you're competing on price. You're competing around everyone else who is charging the same as you, because all they want is someone to turn up and do a bunch of tricks. The moment they ask for you, that's when you can, exploit the market.
And what you're talking about here is obviously creating a personal brand.
Yep.
And getting everybody to buy into you as that brand.
Yep.
How do you do that? Because I mean, obviously, you live in America now, but like I said, in the time period we're talking about, Chris Dugdale was the person that everyone went to. How did you create that brand that made everybody want you? It's nice saying, everybody, make it so that people want Craig Petty, but how do you get people into that situation?
Yeah.
Because it's not about doing tricks differently to everyone else. There's a lot more to it than that, right?
There is a lot more to it than that, but that, I believe, is a big part of it. I think if you can show them something that no one else is doing, you all of a sudden have a unique act. It's about turning up before time. It's about being early every single time. It's about being easy to deal with the agent and the client. It's about going the extra mile. It's about staying on afterwards, after you finish your show, because that's when you're going to get your bookings. Mixing and mingling, if it's appropriate, with the guests in the bar afterwards. That's when you do your networking. And a lot of people that they sort of time off and, right, I'm home now. Big mistake. You should stay on afterwards, if appropriate, if invited, because that's when you're going to get your business.
Perfect. Absolutely brilliant. Now, you built up your close-up sort of business, and it was phenomenally successful. You then co-authored with Phil J the close-up success. And as I say, I bought that back in the day. What made you do that? Because you didn't need to. It wasn't a money thing, I don't think, because you were super successful. So what made you, and this is just so people understand, because now magic comes out every 5 minutes. You refresh Murphy's and there's another 50 products every day. But when you bought this out, magic didn't come out all the time. And there wasn't anything like this course when you bought it out. It was the very first of its kind. So what made you decide to go down that route and create a course like that?
To help other people. I mean, we really, really wanted to help other people. Sure, there was a financial gain from it, but we could see so many basic errors that are so easy to clean up being made by so many people. And it's not because we're perfect. Nobody's perfect. You live and you learn. But one example I can give you is a snapshot moment. So you always have to bear in mind when you're building your brand, if a client sees you for a snapshot in time, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds during a gig, perhaps they're hosting, perhaps they don't even see your act, they're so busy. What snapshot are they going to get? Now, if you want to be a high-end, top-class, corporate, professional close-up magician, is the snapshot that you want for them to take away of you making a balloon dog? Now, there's nothing wrong with making a balloon dog, but is that what you want them to see? Do you want them to see a lame gag that gets no reaction whatsoever, or a trick that everyone else is doing? Always think about the snapshot, because that will help build your brand. And the snapshot has to be top dollar every single time. Craig, it wasn't always easy. I was so skint in this business when I was starting out. I had to sell a hairdryer back to Boots to get £7.
Wow.
You know, it wasn't always easy, and it's bloody hard. And what it comes down to, I think, is belief in yourself, belief in what you can do. So about building your brand, be unique. Think about how you can offer something that other people are not offering. How can you differentiate yourself from the market? What do you wear? What car do you drive? Do they see your car? Do they see your clothing? What watch are you wearing? All these little minutiae, all these details are so important to creating that snapshot of your brand.
That's absolutely brilliant. And would you say that this varies depending on the market that you want to perform in? So, for example, yeah, because you went into corporates, but somebody who's, for example, wanting to be a restaurant magician and they want to be the best restaurant magician they can be, they need to approach things very differently, right?
Absolutely. You have to look at your market. You have to study what's the market and what the client wants from you and what you can give to that market in terms of added benefit, in terms of USP, in terms of revenue gain. You know, at the end of the day, it's business, isn't it? So the client is hiring you in a restaurant to increase their covers. So yes, it would be a different approach. I did restaurants for 2-3 years in Leicester at university. I was doing a side gig, and I came up with a character, rather embarrassing, called the Prankster. I'd wear this really trash purple suit with big shoulder pads. All my close-up stuff was in a violin case like it's a machine gun. It was terrible. But the one thing it did do is it appealed to both kids and adults, because it was really quite good close-up magic and really good kids stuff. So that was the snapshot that I wanted for that restaurant, was a character that brought people in. And we did increase the covers dramatically. So yes, looking back, embarrassing. Yes, I made a fool of myself, but did it work? Yeah, it did.
That's great. And I asked you the question, what would you, have you got any advice on close-up success? At no point have you said anything about passes or double lifts or palms. Everything you've just said there is about the business side of magic. And in the wonderful world of show business, you've got show and you've got business. And a lot of magicians focus on the show and they don't focus on the business. How much effort should somebody put into both? Like somebody who wants to be a super successful magician, how much effort should they put into the business side of magic versus learning how to do another trick that they need to add into their act?
So your magic has to be clean. And a lot of people close their eyes when it comes to watching themselves back, or disregarding that the pass isn't good enough. You know, let's take the pass as an example. Do something else if it's not clean, you know, because if your audience sees something, they may not be sure what it is they've seen, but they know something's happened. The magic is gone. So it has to be clean. There's plenty of other things you can do. Double undercut, cut it down onto the table, whatever you want. But be clean or do something else. And I guess magicians are neophobic. We don't want to try new things. You know, we're in a rut, and yes, we think we are great at what we're doing. Well, actually, when you watch yourself back, you've got to watch yourself back as objectively as you can. And it helps to have other people with you when you're watching your own footage back, people that you can trust, because they will come up with stuff that maybe you don't see, or maybe you don't want to see. But no, it's really important. It's got to be clean. You know, it's got to be. And if that isn't, you're damaging your brand, and you're damaging the heights that you can attain. And it's really worth spending the time on cleaning it all up.
Well, you just said something very interesting there, the heights that you can attain. I've met so many magicians that have a severe case of imposter syndrome. Like why am I here at this event? Why am I here at, what have I got that other magicians haven't got? There's so many people out there that can do a better double lift than me, or that are more articulate than me. Have you got any advice on I don't know, sort of imposter syndrome or self-belief that they can attain those heights that you're talking about?
In the end, the market will tell you your value. Yeah, I mean, we can all get away with the odd gig here or there at reasonable money, but to be really successful, to maintain that fee structure and then to increase it, that the market will tell you, you're going to get the bookings at that fee or you're not. So in terms of advice, just be as objective with yourself as you can. We've all got egos. To be a performer, you have to have an ego. It's our friend, but it's also can be our biggest enemy. Now, why can it be our biggest enemy? It can be our biggest enemy because often we don't want to take notes. We're so wrapped up in what we are doing that if you can get a director in to help you out, that's money well spent. It's really worth getting a director for 2 or 3 hours, a theatrical director who knows something about magic, to look at your work and go, well, try this, try that, and take the notes. Because early on, I found it hard to take notes. Now, I want notes after every show I do. Even if it's the last one at the Edinburgh Festival, I want notes on that night. I want to always get better. I never want to stand still. And no matter what we're doing, what level we've achieved, we can always go higher. And it's looking for that consistent progression. They say that happiness can be defined as growth. And that's pretty true, I think. If you're growing and you're feeling good about it, you're going to be happy.
Amazing. Now, we've talked about close-up magic up until this point, but which is what you did very early on in your career. You were all about the close-up, but obviously now we know you more as a stage performer. Mm-hmm. So what made you decide to transition and move into a stage environment? I mean, you'd sewn up the close-up market. You were the guy. You didn't need to do that. You could have rested on your laurels, to be perfectly honest, but you didn't. And, that was just the beginning of your journey. What made you decide to take that leap and actually start performing on stage?
I've always loved stage. I've loved theatre. The biggest 2 pieces of advice I give any magician is look at theatre, look at actors, and learn music. Okay, completely not related to magic. But if you want to be a better magician, that would be what I say to you, because you can learn lessons from those 2 genres that often are overlooked in magic, and then you can implement those into your magic. I was terrible, Craig. I went into the Young Magician of the Year competition and I was bloody awful. I did a Cameroonian mind reading act, sort of taking on Eddie Murphy. It's possibly the most embarrassing thing you could ever see, and involved this horrific Eddie Murphy laugh. It was absolutely fucking terrible. I went into this, I didn't get anywhere, I got booted out. At one point there was a huge interference over the microphone. I went, oh, the elephants are coming, come. It was awful, absolutely diabolical. So basically I was pretty much thrown off, and I went and argued with the judges. I said, why aren't I in the final? What is... I was deluded, to be honest. Why am I not in the final? And I think one of them just said, look, they were laughing at you, not with you. And that's pretty much the lesson that I took away. Bottom line, I was crap, right? I was terrible, yeah? But I had a go. I tried, yeah? And I learned my lesson, yeah? And little by little, every mistake we make, write it down, what you've learned, keep a diary, get over Evernote. If there's any magician watching this who hasn't got Evernote, get it. It's free online. It's a brilliant application. Write down every single thing you learn under the title show, date it, what you've learned, what goes well with an audience, what doesn't go well with an audience, so you can try and be objective in your own feedback, because it's really, really difficult to do. So to answer your question in a long-winded form, I've always been fascinated by stage. I saw Copperfield in Vegas. It was the best thing I'd ever seen. The Death Saw, that was when I was like, wow, amazing. This is not possible. And I think that's the most beautiful part of magic, where as a magician, you know what's coming and you think it's not going to happen. It can't happen. It's impossible. And then boom, it does happen. And you're like, that's the gift that we can give lay people every time we work. And if we always remember that gift that we can give them, You know, we can create stories that last 20 years every single time we perform. And that's got to ignite us. It's got to make us exciting. How privileged are we to be able to do that? You know, it's incredible. So I've always loved stage. I was terrible at it. I kept going. I did numerous talent shows around the Windsor Slough area. Terrible. I tried levitating someone on a chair suspension, and I couldn't get the bloody board back under, right? This woman is literally stuck in midair. My pants are changing color. The parents are behind my parents. It's very embarrassing. Once again, thrown off. Yeah, pretty much thrown off. I think they closed the curtains on me with her stuck there. Yeah, just embarrassing stuff. I did a huge thing where I tried to be Jerry Sadowitz for a while. Embarrassing, terrible, you know, at college, because you're trying to find your own way. You're trying to find you. And that's the biggest benefit of reading a book, is that it helps you find you, because you have to interpret what you are reading as opposed to copying what you are seeing, which has more of a danger of cloning people. So read the books. By all means, you know, look at your DVDs and look at your downloads, but read those books and interpret them how you see it, because it's going to help in the long run. So terrible for a long time, Craig. Terrible. Embarrassingly bad. But I always did well at the close-up. So that was how I was earning my money, yeah. And, you know, my parents were asked the same question as your parents probably were. Oh, when's he going to get a decent job? When's he going to be a doctor? When's he going to be a lawyer? And then as soon as you turn up with your seventh Porsche, they start, oh, well done you. Now, that's not that I'm being arrogant here telling you that story. I'm telling you because you have to have that self-belief in times where it's bloody difficult, in times where everyone around you perhaps is telling you, don't do this, do something else, you know, stay the comfortable path. If you've got that passion in you, let it burn, let it ignite, and share your gift. Because I think with nerves, a lot of people get nervous, but if you reframe it as, I'm here to share with you my passion and my gift, a lot of your nerves go away, you know, instantly. If you can reframe that in your mind, and it's all about being excited rather than being nervous. So I guess I learned the hard way, the school of hard knocks, and it finally culminated in a local director, a TV guy, sort of getting in touch with me, and we did a local show in Windsor. But he really helped structure it, and he looked at the work, and we filmed it. We watched it afterwards, and that was better. It wasn't great, but it was better. And then from there, I met Tony Middleton. But before we go there, I've got to tell you about Roy Johnson, because Roy, at college, he was based in Leicester. So Roy, he sadly passed away a few years ago, but he was an immense gift to me and to my art. And I loved spending time with him. He was an incredible man, a great thinker, really warm. And I'd pay him my pocket money to go and see him for lessons every week. And, you know, I'd annoyingly knock on his door every single week. And often his face is like, oh, not him again. But you know, I studied with him and I learned a lot. I learned a lot from Roy Johnson, as did Wayne, and as did many, many people. You know, he's left a great legacy in terms of artists that follow his train of thought. And I got to see him perform stage, which was really amazing and really interesting. So that was that side of things, yeah.
And then you said you met somebody else. You said what was the name? I didn't recognize the other name.
So Tony Middleton became my director for many years, and Tony has his background is he's a theatre director by education, but he's actually a professional magician now. He runs the Magic Hour in London, which is the longest running show in London now for magic, parlour magic. But Tony's background is theatre, and obviously probably the biggest influence on my career is Phil J, really. So there's a lot of people to talk about, and then Charles Buck in Vegas. But yeah, Tony really gave me structure, and he really gave me objectivity, and he looked at my work and he said, that's good, that's crap, get rid of that, that's good, that's crap, that doesn't work, this does. Why? You know, when you hear that why, always ask why, and always ask yourself the question as a performer, and then what? You know, so I do this, and then what? And you end up in a certain place, and it might be somewhere that you don't want to be. So you've got to have the balls to change what you're doing, because changing can be bloody hard work, you know, as well as I do. You know, you've put sweat, tears, ego, effort into something, and all of a sudden, boom, you got to get rid of it because perhaps it just ain't good enough. But it's hard having that conversation with yourself, right? It's difficult. You really have to, if you can, try and work with someone else who's objective about your work. So through university, I'm doing terrible stage gigs, really good close-up work. Then I met Paul Stone, and that changed my entire life because Paul sent me to Vegas. You couldn't find anyone in Vegas, and this is just after I came out of college, who could sell and perform. And I said, well, I can do that. I'll need a bit of help, but I can do it. So I ended up working for Lance Burton, who is the greatest magician ever to have lived, in my opinion, period. And every night, Craig, every night after I'd finished, I did close-up for him in the lobby, and then I ran his shop. So we're selling magic to the punters as they come out of seeing the world's greatest magician. You know, you've seen the greatest magician in the world. Now take some magic home with you. This is stuff that you can do. Come over here, come look at this. And then we'd sell thousands and thousands of dollars every night of magic that people can do. But what I didn't tell many people is that after every shift, I would sneak into the theater and watch his opening 10, 12 minutes. I must have seen it hundreds of times. And wow, what an experience, right? The greatest magician in the world, who became my friend. And we go out for beers afterwards, because listen, it's about being kind. We talked about this earlier. When we're all dead and gone, you know, in many years to come, hopefully, what are people going to say about your art? And what are people going to say about you as a person? Do you want them to say, he's a brilliant magician, but he was an arsehole? I don't think it's a legacy that people want to leave. And I don't think it's something that people think about enough. So I've always treated people with respect. And I treat people, if they're the cleaner, you know, if they're sweeping the room, I'll treat them with as much respect as I did the Queen. And that's from my heart, because we're all valuable as human beings. But big mistake a lot of artists make is ego gets involved. Oh, look at me, look at the great I am. And they're rude to people. Well, guess what? That person sweeping up the floor one day could be an assistant manager. And one day, more than likely, will end up being a manager. So if you're thinking purely from a business sense and not a humanitarian sense, which I don't advise, but if you are, it still doesn't make sense from a capitalist point of view. You gotta be kind to people, and you gotta, you know, share your gift with them and treat everyone with respect. Never be needy. You don't need to be needy from anyone. You know, you should always hold yourself high and hold your face high and be proud of what you do, but be kind. I mean, some people have tough lives, and we can, in a few seconds, give them a moment that lasts for a long, long time. So why not be kind and courteous and show them a trick when they ask? Why not go the extra mile and stay behind for 5-10 minutes and show the cleaners something, you know? Why not do that? Because it's in our capacity and we can do it. All of us can do it. So big part of success, I believe, is treating people kind. And the biggest stars, Craig, I've ever met, and I'll be honest, I'm not going to name too many names in the interview, but I pretty much entertain most of them. They're really nice people. 99% of them are really nice people.
That's great. That's fantastic advice. How long did you stay in Vegas for working with Lance?
So I was on and off for 2 years. I was coming in and out, doing other projects, going back to the shop. So yeah, over a period of 2 years. And I'm still in touch with him today. He's the nicest human being in the world. He's incredible. What you get from watching Lance is the character of the man. You know, he comes on and he does his dove act, which is perfection. But then he's like, hi, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm the only guy who owns a tuxedo. And, you know, he's taking the piss out of himself. And you're like, this guy is a legend. He's a legend. But what can we learn from the structure of Mr. Burton? Well, I think we can all learn something. We can learn that when perhaps you go to a table, maybe the first opening should be something incredible that they just watch. Maybe they're not interacting in the first couple of minutes and they're like, oh, wow. And then it's about being authentic. It's about getting respect, than being authentic. And congruency is a word that I use a lot. Is your material congruent to your personality? Is the way that you perform congruent to your authentic you, who you really are? And that along my journey took a long time to find who that person is. And ever since I found that, my level of success has gone up, undoubtedly. And your brand is tighter because it's authentically Craig Petty or authentically Chris Dugdale that they want to hire.
Well, let me ask you a question. You've mentioned several times through this interview, being true to yourself, finding out who you are. Let's talk very quickly about characterization, because we're told as magicians that we need to find a character. And a lot of the time, the advice that's bandied around is just be yourself. But how do you be yourself? I mean, have you got any advice on crafting a character and injecting yourself into it?
Yeah, watch as much art as you can, different kind of art forms. Make sure that you step outside your comfort zone in doing things that you normally wouldn't do. So if you've never seen a ballet, go and watch a ballet. If you've never seen an opera, go and watch an opera. If you're not into heavy metal, go to a heavy metal concert. Just because you might hate it, but you're going to learn something from it, not just about what you're watching, but about you. So a really good way to do it, if you're married or you've got a girlfriend or a partner, is to have a day where you each choose 3 activities. Okay, so for you, your wife would choose 3 activities for Craig, but they've got to be 3 things that Craig has never done in his life. Okay, and you do this day together, and it's really, really a great day out. I mean, and then you get her back because you then choose 3 things for her. And we did it in Vegas. I was really down in the dumps one day. I'd lost a dear family member. I was working for Lance, but I was down, yeah. And my girlfriend, now my wife, kind of arranged this day for me with Charles Buck, and we did jazz dance, which I was absolutely terrible at. I mean, the worst in the world. But the instructor was so lovely and so flamboyant. And you can't give up now. Come on, let me show those steps again. And I'm like, no, I'm terrible. But you know, make a fool of yourself. It doesn't matter. You know that adage, dance like nobody's watching. Yeah, do it. Have fun. I think play, Craig, is the way you find it, by playing. You know, if you watch all these top actors, they'll talk about the importance of play within acting and playing with the lines and trying lines different way and in different characterizations and different carving the words in a different way, putting emphasis on different words. By playing, you can find out who you really are and doing different things. So probably not magic related, but comes back hugely into magic. You know that Google give you, I think it's half a day off a week on their pay to do something completely unrelated to business. I think it's every Wednesday afternoon, every Google employee.
I've not heard that.
Yeah, they pay you to do something completely not, but it hasn't got to be anything to do with your work. Because their philosophy, which we can embrace as magicians, is you're going to go and find out so much about the world around you and bring it back to your work, aren't you? On a subconscious level. So go and do stuff you don't normally do. Make a fool of yourself. Be happy. Learn your lessons. Keep going. Every time you get knocked down, get back up, because you're going to get knocked down a lot. You know, you don't lose, you live or you learn. And that's something, you know, and it's that, what is it? You know, a winner never quits and a quitter never wins. And it's these, you know, that are poo-pooed by many, these phrases, but they're actually bloody true. You know, they're actually the core of success. You know, these phrases have not come about by accident.
I want to ask you one more thing about stage and performing on stage before we move on. One thing that a lot of people overlook, when I reviewed your pre-mental diction product, which is amazing, there was a bonus section at the end where you talked about how to communicate effectively, how to speak with confidence, and so on and so forth. And you were talking about it in the context of a virtual sort of show. But that's something that a lot of people forget when they make the decision that they're going to move from close-up to stage. They think about the tricks, they think about all this stuff, but they forget about vocal projection. They forget about communicating articulately with the audience. As somebody who I kind of have to say you're a bit of an expert at that, because I watched this on pre-mental diction. It was amazing. And I know that you are hired by companies to keynote on this sort of subject. Is there any advice you can quickly give us about vocal projection and speaking clearly and the importance of it?
You always have to do vocal exercises, and I will send you a link with pleasure from my director Tony, who gives 3 great vocal exercises. So you've got to warm yourself up. You've got to learn to be comfortable in your own skin in an uncomfortable environment. For many, you know, the more you do it, the easier it does get. I believe you should be anxious, not to the point where nerves degrade from your performance, but if you don't have any, you know, fear, or you don't care. You don't care. And it's at that point you've got to take a serious look at yourself and go, hold on a minute, I'm kind of getting into trouble here, you know. But study acting, Craig. I mean, that would be my biggest advice. I've taken movement classes, I've taken acting classes, I've taken public speaking. I was trained as a television presenter. You know, that's my kind of background. So you've got to take as many trainings as you can. You've got to invest in yourself. And if you're not willing to invest in yourself, who else is going to invest in you? You know, it's important to put your money where your mouth is, quite literally, and learn. You know, we can never stop learning, can we? You know, let's be honest.
That's very true. That's absolutely true. Can I just reverse a little bit? Your background is in television presenting.
Absolutely.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So the first sort of training, official training I did was in London, and it was as a presenter. So I did all these courses. I think I've done 3 courses on it, and it was really interesting. And it's fascinating to look back now and to see how unnatural we all are at the start, and how we're trying to put on some kind of act, when really what people want to see is the humanity and who you really are. So I think being able to be authentically you, revealing who you really are on a stage, is in itself an art form. And you get that by making mistakes, by playing, and by getting up every single time you get knocked down. You know, you've got to get out of the comfort zone, right?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Now, talking about going out your comfort zone, you obviously did Penn and Teller, and I'll bring that up because for me, your performance from Penn and Teller was one of the most iconic that there was. That reveal, I just didn't see coming. I was just, my God, that's amazing. I was just blown away. And I think you were there on the very first series from memory, and it's obviously run now for like 8, 9, 10 seasons. I suppose I have a couple of questions. One, what made you decide to do Penn and Teller? Like, you are super successful, Chris Dugdale. You know, you don't need the work, you don't need the exposure. You've been on TV so many different times. What made you decide? Was it a case of going out your comfort zone? And then what made you put the act together that you did, which was very different to anything else I've seen before?
So my remit, so this is another piece of advice I can give. If anyone finds it useful, please use it. Always work your goals backwards. So work with what you want as an end point, and then take steps back and try and write down the steps back. Don't work forward towards a goal. So my goal, working backwards from that, was I wanted something for my reel where I absolutely shocked the leading television presenter in the UK, Jonathan Ross. And I wanted that 4 or 5 seconds of unbelievable footage of him losing his shit, right? And that's what I got. That's what I got. If you look at my reel, it's in every reel I got. I wasn't necessarily even focused on the Penn and Teller thing. I was more, at that time, focused on getting that footage. So here's another piece of advice I can hopefully give to people. When you're offered a gig or a piece of work, don't just look at the money, look at the opportunities that can come from that gig. Because currency in our business isn't just money. Currency can be an amazing piece of footage, an incredible photo, an interview, publicity of some kind. These are all currency units within the magic business. Okay, so you've got to look about concretely what you are going to get out of a gig. Example, I went to Rio to do a World Cup launch. The money was not great, but I got to hold the freaking World Cup. All right. In currency, what is that picture worth the rest of my career that I can use it? Probably invaluable. It's probably invaluable. The footage that I got from that gig, invaluable. So it's not just about the money. It's about what you can get back. So coming back to Penn and Teller, I wanted that reaction from Jonathan Ross. And I also wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to do something that was totally, utterly different from everyone else. And I wanted to do a trick where in years to come, you have to ask yourself the question, yeah, but did I really know? Was I really fooled or not? And so almost I wanted to give the onus of wonder to the individual audience member to make themselves ask that question. Yeah, but, and they say, oh, I knew it was you all along. Yeah, but did you really know? Did you really? And I think that's kind of an interesting concept. So that's what I did. I wanted the images. I wanted the imagery. Craig, it's been incredible. My God, that's one of the best things I've ever done. Hand on my heart. I was getting slagged off by so many magicians. And guess what? That even made me happier because they just didn't get it. They didn't get it. And I was being offered huge corporate fees to do half an hour, including part of the Penn and Teller act, but as different characters. It wasn't just Leroy that I used. I've used Victor, I've used Elder, I've used all these different characters. And, some of them would come on and he'd be a bumbling idiot from Oxford University, be the keynote speaker. And I'm not going to bore you now. You've got plenty of time tomorrow during my lecture to bore you, but I want to show you a magic trick, and it's me all along, right? And that's how I get into my act. And they'd never see it coming. So what I was after is a corporate application to give them something completely different, and it worked a treat. And, when I look at some of these, I try not to look too much at the negative naysayers, because very rarely have they got something constructive. If something is constructive, I'll look at it, because I think when people are trying to give you advice, look at what they've done, look at where they've come from, look at where they're going, and do you respect them before you really listen to their advice? And also be careful of friends and family, because they're always not going to be as objective as we might try to be. So yeah, it was. Twitter basically blew up when I did it. It was going mental, and then ITV just said it is the best end of any trick ever shown on television. Now, what currency does that give me? That quote, how much is that worth? I can't put a value on that.
Not at all. Not at all. That's just, yeah, that's incredible. And you mentioned there so many different things. You talked about rather than money, think about the footage, think about the picture. What we're talking about here is social proof. Mm-hmm. Stuff that you can use in a marketing capacity, whether it be on a website or a show reel or whatever, that says to people, look at what I've done, look at what I've accomplished. My question is, credibility. So for somebody who's new, they've just decided to turn professional. They don't have the reputation that you do. They're not going to get approached to go over to Rio, regardless of the fee. How do you get that social proof? Because it's almost like a chicken and an egg thing, isn't it? You need social proof to be put into a position where you can get social proof, but how do you get that social proof in the first place to be in a position where you get more of it?
You have to ask yourself, what am I already doing that's good, and how can I get into the market? So for me, it was kids shows. I did my kids show, but at the end, I'd always do a bit of close-up for the adults. So my main purpose of going to the kids show, sure, I was earning some money from it, but my main purpose was to meet adults who more than likely are going to be corporate people, and to show them close-up magic. That was my end goal, working backwards. And so at one point, back in the day, somebody said, oh, do you do corporate? And I went, what's corporate? And they go, well, come along and show, our business some tricks. And that was how I got my first ever gig, from kids shows. So you've got to, none of us are in that position to start with, though. You have to carve your own niche and find your way into the market. And for some people nowadays, it will be social media. For other people, it will be perhaps they're professional speakers, but they want to be magicians. There's many different ways of combining different skill sets to get into your end market, your desired market.
And on that, do you have any advice on getting on TV? Because I've seen you do so many TV spots. Like, I'm not talking about full-on shows. I'm just talking, hey, here's Chris on doing 10 minutes on this show, and here's Chris on this program doing 5 minutes on this show. You seem to be on TV doing TV spots all of the time. Do you have any advice on getting that sort of exposure?
So TV, I'm involved in a huge project right now that we will see when COVID finishes, how that goes. It's really, really progressive. It's really exciting. I'll give you a scoop on it if and when it happens with pleasure. But it's the biggest thing I've ever done by a long, long way. And we're 3 years into it, but then COVID just stopped. But I will give you a scoop if and when I can. Advice on getting on TV. I wrote to Blue Peter as a snotty little kid in England once again, I think I was overinflated in my ability. I was crap. I just said, "Oh, I'd love to come into your studio and levitate your presenter." Now, I couldn't do that. I just wrote them the letter, sent it off, didn't hear anything. About 8 months later, I was in my dressing gown, a little envelope floated down to the floor, and it had a blue ship in the corner. And I'm like, "Oh, look at this." So I opened it up, and they said, "This idea of you levitating a presenter, it actually sounds quite interesting. Will you come and show us? You know, let's arrange a time." Pants change color moment, don't know what I'm doing. I didn't even have a levitation, right? So I just wanted to give them a hook. You've got to give people hooks, and you've got to deliver. But there's no problem in this business on over delivering in terms of a concept, providing you then can do it. You might not know how to do it at the time of pitching the idea, and you better not let them down, but give yourself a goal, because that gets the juices flowing. Guess what? You're excited, you're nervous, you're scared, you're out your comfort zone. But so I turned up to the audition, if you like, and I did a chair suspension, right, and a few card tricks. But here's where I went one step further, stupidly or very cleverly. I said, "Yeah, if you put me on the show next Thursday, I'll take the other chair away." I didn't know how to do that. I had no idea, right? And I was completely blagging it. And they said, "All right, then you're on Thursday." Now, back in the day, when I was 18, 19, Blue Peter was a huge deal. There's like 6-7 million people. It was the biggest kids show in the UK. And I didn't know what I'm doing. So I bought a Super X Illusion. I scoured the market, bought one, practiced it, and pulled it off. And there we go. So find a hook. If you want to get into TV, find a hook. Give them something that they're interested in. You might have to blag it a bit but don't let them down, because you've only got one shot and you have to deliver. But you might need to, proverbially blag it a little to get the interest, shall we say.
That's great. That is amazing advice. And any magician that's watching this, I hope they realize just how many golden nuggets you're dropping here, Chris. This is fantastic.
Thank you.
So, no, it's true. So here's the thing. We're at a position now where you are super successful. Close up, stage, you've got into keynote speaking as well. You're massively in demand when it comes to working with corporates. You now live in America. So how did we get from dominating the market, and you are, performing everywhere, performing for the Queen, here, there, and everywhere, to moving to America? Where did that come in? How did that come about?
So I was always performing in America my whole career. I find that I really relate to an American audience, particularly a New York audience, where, if they like you, they'll let you know. And if they don't like you, they will let you know. I just work better with an American audience. The simple fact being, and this is not derogatory towards the Brits, I love Britain, it'll always be my heart, it's where I'm from. But in England, it's like, come on then, prove yourself. And once you get through this, they're brilliant. English audiences are fantastic. But Americans like, "Oh my God, you're a magician. That's fantastic. Let's see what you can do." They kind of give you the open door to show what you can do without as much prejudgment. So I was always here. I was working for Lance. I did some shows with the original Naked Magicians, and that's a completely different story. And we ended up in Vegas on the Strip with that show. But then we ended up in a courtroom with a very nasty court case because someone kind of ripped us off. But that's a different story for another time. Bottom line, I ended up living here out of an emergency. My wife fell very sick in the UK. She's an American citizen. The NHS, as much as I love them on this case, couldn't do what we desperately needed them to do within the time frame. So within 2 weeks, Greg, we packed up everything and we left to get her sorted out. And thankfully, she's sorted out. But without your health, nothing is important. We get so wrapped up in the wrong things. But look after yourself, feed yourself well, exercise well, because without this temple, we can't perform, to the best of our abilities. And you realize, I've met many billionaires who got all the money in the world and they fall sick, and guess what? Their money doesn't help them one bit. So it's changed my life, Craig, losing my dad, moving to America within 2 weeks. I couldn't even get a mobile phone when I moved here. I didn't have any credit. It's all about credit score in the US. And, we did okay. But you've got to believe in yourself, and you just got to work so bloody hard. And my question to the people watching this is, how hard, look me in the eyes and be honest with me right now. How hard are you willing to work? What are you willing to do? Because that will ultimately determine, if you're smart, that will determine how successful you are. And at the start, off camera, Craig, I praised you, and I meant it sincerely, because of the sheer amount of work you're doing and the amount of videos you're putting out. It's incredible. It's passionate,
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you. But Chris, you talked about work hard, and you mentioned it at the very beginning. You mentioned it now: work hard, work hard, work hard. But there's an element of working smart as well. Would you agree? Anybody can be a busy fool, and they can fool themselves into, right, I've spent a whole day doing stuff, and really they've done nothing other than go on Facebook and argue with a few people. Do you have any advice on working smart as well as working hard, and maximizing your day?
Look at your results. What are you actually achieving? What are you getting? At the end of the day, I hate the magic community when people slag each other off all the time, and they spend so much valuable energy doing that, because it's so destructive, not only for the person that they are doing it to, but equally, perhaps more so from yourself. If you are guilty of that, it's really self-destructive. So just work hard on learning the craft, and learning how to present, and learning your technique, and then marrying them both together. Be objective, find a director. It's all the stuff I've talked about before, but it's where we can't see ourselves clearly. We need some kind of lens that just puts everything into focus for us. And it might be unpleasant. It might be deeply unpleasant. The first time I went to, the thing that ultimately changed my career, perhaps more than anything, is Edinburgh Festival. The first time I went there, I took a show from the West End that did pretty well in the West End. We went there, and I got a 1-star review. And it was not just bad, it was personally vindictive. It was aggressive. It was attacking. It was horrible. And I was in a big space in Edinburgh, and that review cost me a lot of money. It cost me my dignity and my pride at that time. And I sat there at the end of the run, because I knew that my product was a minimum 3-star product. Even if you're a harsh critic, it was a minimum 3-star. And I sat there with my team, and I had a big team up there, and I'm paying them all. And, I worked my butt off for 30 days, and I lost 5 grand. I'm 5 grand out of pocket after working harder than I've ever worked in my life. And it's at those moments in your life. And if you can recognize when you come to these crossroads, it's hugely valuable, because you make a decision. You choose, all right, do I quit? Do I give up? Or do I take what I've learned and go back next year? And we went back next year, and we stormed it. We've stormed it ever since. But it was a hard pill to swallow, and it was unpleasant. And it wasn't classy what they wrote, and it wasn't dignified. But do you know what? At the same time as that 1-star review came out, my business was doing better than ever. Corporates were calling me from all over the world. I was getting better fees than I ever had. So there is not necessarily an artistic correlation or a quote unquote success correlation between reviews and your success within the business. I think Ricky Gervais very, very famously on his posters puts 5-star, 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 and then he puts his 1-star up on his poster, just as a screw you to the reviewer who sits on your ass and never does anything and never has the balls to get up on a stage yourself. Anyone that goes to Edinburgh, I take my hat off to them. Anybody that does that festival, you have my total respect. Even if your show is shit, you're trying. You're getting on that stage. You're working bloody hard. It's an amazing experience. And I've learned more lessons doing it. I've done it 8 years now, Craig, with Assembly. I've
spoken to a few people on this channel that do a lot at the Edinburgh Fringe. Tom Crosby, Oliver Meach, to name a couple. They've given some great advice. Have you got any advice on somebody who's sitting there going, you know what, Chris is right. I'm gonna go to Edinburgh next year. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna make a name for myself. Have you got any advice?
Do the free Fringe to start with, because it doesn't cost you, and you do a split with the box office. Think about what it is that you can do that differentiates yourself from a from a West End or corporate crowd, because Edinburgh's a different ball game. That's what I didn't understand when I went there first time. I went in with the big production show. I went in with the laminated brochures and the big projections and the special effect. It was a really nice show, but it wasn't suitable for Edinburgh. It wasn't what they're after. So my advice would be, don't worry about your set. You can do very minimal set. It doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't have to be totally professional, but it has to be different. It has to be something that they grab hold of in terms of the press particularly, and they gravitate towards. So yeah, just go for it. I mean, go for all these festivals, but Edinburgh does have the free fringe, which is an amazing gift to entertainers, where you can go, no risk, and work hard for 30 days. You think about what you've learned over 30 days, doing an hour on stage. That's more than one day of your entire life. If I was to stand Craig Petty on the stage for one day of his life, and, you know, sleep wasn't an issue, food wasn't an issue, you had perfect energy for the 24 hours, and I'm watching you and giving you help all the time, you're going to come off being a better performer. You are. There's no doubt. That's what Edinburgh gives you. So I work out all the air miles that I've got over 8 years. It's a ton. And you can't learn that from books, and you can't learn that from DVD. You know.
And do you still do Edinburgh Fringe now? Because you're in a position where you don't need to, though, do you? I mean,
I always do Edinburgh, and it's nothing about the money. It's about the connections that I make from Edinburgh that then translate later into money. So an example was a guy was in there from the University of Georgia. They're a huge campus over here. Oh, I love the show. I want to book it. Okay, great. Never heard from him, right? Never heard from him. If you have, so another piece of advice, I hope I'm giving value here, Craig, you know, genuine value. Always take control of that relationship, that interaction. So always get their details. Yeah, never just give your card away. Whenever you give a card, get a card, get an email, get a phone number, right? Because sometimes people are busy and it may not be their intention that they don't call you. Life happens, life gets in the way. Make sure you can be in control. So I had this guy's information. I wrote to him, didn't hear a thing. Wrote to him again, didn't hear a thing. So I hand wrote a card and I sent it in the mail. And he goes, Chris, I'm so sorry. I've been through a personal crisis. I want to book you. But I got this huge gig. Really nice people. Told me two things before I went on the stage. First of all, just so you're aware, there's a concealed weapons permit allowed in this theatre because it's part of the school. So just so you're aware, some people could have guns in the audience. I'm like, hope they like my tricks, hope they laugh at my gags, or else I'm really screwed. Secondly, and I kid you not, as long as I live, I'll never forget this. He looked at me and he goes, I've only ever hired 2 magicians before you. I said, oh, who's that? He goes, Harry Blackstone Jr. and David Copperfield. Good luck. It was a great gig. They were lovely. I did 2 nights with them. They were fantastic. But my God, talk about putting the pressure on.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, in answer to your question, I do Edinburgh for the currency that is not financial. Yeah, don't go to Edinburgh expecting you're going to make a ton of money. You very rarely do. Now I'm in a position where I do pretty well, but it takes years. You know, you've got to build up a local niche, a following. Be prepared to lose some money. Put your money where your mouth is. How much do you believe in yourself? That's the question. How much money are you prepared to take out of your pocket and bet on yourself? That's a good question to ask.
And you know what? Over and over again, I've got from you in this interview that it's not all about the money, which is a very different thing that you hear on the forums where people go, you don't do shows for free. You don't ever go out for free. You have to go out for a full fee or not at all. And you're saying, well, actually, that's not the case. You know, there's lots of other things that you can get from going and performing as opposed to just money.
It's not the case, providing you are assured of the other currency that you're going to receive. So don't fall for the old line, oh, Hello Magazine might be turning up. You know, well, are they or are they not? You know, you get some bookers who try it on to get a freebie. No, you got to be absolutely bloody certain. You can ask for them. You can ask for it in writing. You can ask for an email, you know, providing they're happy to do that. And that will quickly determine whether they're serious or not. And go, oh, do me a favor. Will you just confirm those details for me in an email? And then you're going to know because at the end of the day, if you turn up there, you get sod all out of it. They got a free gig. You're going to be pissed off, right? It's your time, your energy, your money that you've spent to get to that gig. So to be fair to the artist, you need to have those assurances that what they say is going to happen, or, you know, providing there's nothing, no emergency, they had the intention, absolute honest intention that it was going to happen. Because otherwise you can get screwed. So freebies, be careful of them. Yeah, overall, they don't really pan out. But if you're assured, you know, you can negotiate your fee to a lower fee if you can get other benefits that might help you further down the line. And I think that's a big part of this business, Craig, is looking, okay, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, this photo or this footage, how valuable is it going to be to me then? And if the answer is hugely, then do the gig.
Yeah, that's great. Let me ask you one other aspect that we haven't talked about, or briefly talked about, which is recently you brought out Pre-Mental Diction, which I reviewed and I raved about. It's an amazing opener. I suppose the question is, what made you decide to release a magic product? Like, you are super successful. We've talked about you command very high fees, and then all of a sudden you decide to bring out a magic product. One, why did that? Why then? Why now? And also, I'm not aware of that much stuff you've brought out over the years. But I know that you're a very creative person, but most of the time your creativity is channeled on your own show, not on something that you're trying to release to the magic community. But with the release of Pre-Mental Diction, are we going back to releasing magic to magicians and releasing information to magicians like we did back in the day with Close-Up Success, where there was a lot of information and there were tricks in there as well? Or is this a one-off thing?
I have got a few projects in the pipeline. I wanted to do it to help people because we're all in this shitty situation where all of a sudden we've all lost all of our gigs because of COVID. We're sat there going, what the hell are we going to do? Oh, let's go online. Okay, what can I do? And this, so I sent you one of these, right? I am so proud of this book. I hope you like it, Craig. I want you to be honest with me, but I've sent you one to review. This has got so many nuggets in it. It's a hybrid of business advice, of amazing blockbuster tricks, and a few essays to really make you think. But this kind of image there kind of sums up my take on you know, on magic and the wonder that we can give people. It's that little boy in all of us, or little girl who's dreaming to reach the moon and the stars through artistic expression and the gift that we can give other people. So yes, there are a few other things coming out. I think Pre-Mental Diction is immensely powerful for Zoom. I use it every Zoom show I get. And it was basically to help other people. And it's because I was approached by Vortex Magic, the nice people there, and said, oh, we read the book, we love this item, we want to manufacture it. I said, go for it, do it, let's do it, sort out a deal. So I'm glad you really liked it. And it's one of those things that also is quite interesting. The ego of the person reviewing it comes into play, because when they know what it is, they go, oh, that's simple. But hey, the Zigzag Girl's simple. Most of the greatest things in our business are simple. And so another gem I hope to be able to give people is, as we get bigger in this business, as our ego increases, never let your ego get in the way of simplicity. Because, you know, the invisible deck, for example, is probably the world's greatest close-up trick, right? I mean, any trick that you can describe in 1 or 2 sentences that has a major impact is a winner. And this, I believe, Pre-Mental Diction is one of those, because it's like, boom, I've never met you on Zoom. You're thousands of miles away. I'm going to try and influence you right now. I'm going to try and influence you to say what I want you to say, and you do it. Yes, in your review, you're right, Craig. Credibility, credibility, credibility.
Yeah, 100%.
It's that Lance Burton Dove moment of them going, crap, he's just read my mind from thousands of miles away. This guy's amazing. What's he going to do next?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Absolutely.
The biggest mistake people can make over Zoom is sacrificing entertainment for procedure. An example, they get their own cards, they're shuffling it, they're cutting it into numerous piles. Oh, they're counting down. Oh, I'm falling asleep. You know, I'm falling asleep. And so what if the props are in their own hand, if it's bloody boring? You know, procedure should never be given precedence to entertainment, ever. And a lot of these Zoom things, I'm just looking at it and going, that's just not entertaining. You know, Real magic exists. Real magic is the misinterpretation of the effect in the mind of the spectator. All right, let's be clear. Real magic exists. We can create real magic through the misinterpretation. If Craig Petty and Chris Dugdale both see a car accident and we're both being completely honest about it, within 10 seconds, we're going to give a very different report about what we just saw. And it's not because we're being dishonest, but it's the way the brain manipulates what it's just seen. So let's use that to our advantage, and let's hit them hard, hit them fast over Zoom. You know, in a Zoom, I'm really close up like this. I want to interact with you. I want to connect with you. I don't want a table shot. You know, sure, I put it down for a little section, but I want to interact. I want to get, there are several advantages of Zoom, right? We know everyone's name straight away. Yeah, you never have to ask anyone's name. Secondly, the conditions around us are always 100% the same and controlled by us. Yeah. Thirdly, we can lay down props on our table. Okay. We can lay down a bunch of props and move left to right on the table. So you don't have to remember your order because you pick up left to right. Yeah. And they don't know what's going on. We've got this amazing frame, which we can do things out of frame, bring back into frame. There's so many advantages. And to be honest, when I first started Zoom, I hated it, Craig. I hated it. It's like performing for a bunch of mute seals. Yeah. Now I love it. I love it. It's so.
Do you think it's going to go away now that live entertainment's coming back, or do you think it's always going to be there, Chris?
There'll be a part of it that's always there, I'm sure. I think what we're going to see initially in the reintegration of quote unquote normality is hybrid. I think, you know, Microsoft's productivity has gone up 33% in America since COVID hit. Because guess what? They're not sat in bloody traffic every day for 2 hours. They're working. Yeah. So these businesses are not stupid. They will combine, hopefully, the best of in-person and the best of virtual. I think it'll be here for a degree. And I think anyone that poo-poos Zoom, yeah, it might not be your taste, but it's a big market. You're closing your door on a big market. You know, one day in December, I did four big paid corporate Zoom shows. I started off in Europe, the East Coast of America, West Coast of America, finished at 1:30 a.m. That's what time I was going on in Singapore. Got up my stairs to my house, and my phone literally goes, ka-ching, the Venmo payment from the agent. And I went, that is surreal. I have entertained all around the world without leaving my stool, and I've been paid in seconds. You know, our world is changing. So it may not be everyone's cup of tea, but you are closing your door on a huge opportunity.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Very, very true. Let me ask you two more questions before we wrap things up. And the first question I want to ask you is, well, actually, before I ask you that question, where can people get the book? I want to put a link at the bottom because I am going to be reviewing it.
Yeah.
It is the next thing that I'm going to be looking at, but is it available directly from you?
It is. So it's www.xyabook.com. XYA book. And the whole title is because we go through this journey. So the alphabet here is used metaphorically as we go through the journey, we find out who we are. And then ultimately we go back to the start and realize that the most important thing is us. That's the most important thing, you know, but you have to fail your way. You have to find these things out for yourself. And it's about being ballsy, you know, having the balls to make a mistake and, you know, just have fun with it. I think Paul Daniels said too many people take themselves too seriously. And when somebody asked him what's the biggest piece of advice he could give, his answer was have a stable table. Now, I believe the metaphor, that was a metaphor, I believe, to being comfortable in the relationship the audience has with the performer. You know, are they good? You can tell within seconds if someone's good or not. The way they walk on the stage, the passion, the energy, the way they connect. You know, it's like hearing a singer hit that first note. You can tell. You can tell with a magician too. You can tell what they're like. And don't believe everything that other magicians, I know this is ironic, but don't believe everything you hear from other magicians. Oh, you can't do mentalism and magic together. Of course you can. You can do anything you want. Often the magic world is like a flea in a jar. The flea jumps out the jar, no problem. Then they put the lid on it. The flea bangs its head, take the lid off. The flea can't jump out anymore because of what other magicians are telling them. I saw the most ludicrous thing on a forum once, and I don't spend much of the time there. I was just glancing through it. Someone said, yeah, well, the maximum you can get for a Zoom show is 500 quid. Well, guess what? If that is the maximum that you are setting yourself, that is your maximum. But don't put limits on yourself, because as soon as they want Craig Petty, they'll pay you whatever you want. They will pay you whatever they think you are worth. You know,
Absolutely.
And if in doubt, when talking about fees, it's really good, two things: to have someone else selling you. So I could sell Craig Petty better than Craig Petty can sell himself, simply because I can tell you Craig Petty is the best interviewer in magic today. I can tell you he does the best. Craig Petty can't sit there and go, I am the best at this. I am the best. Because guess what? You become arrogant, right? So that third party integration in terms of the sales funnel is absolutely very important. And secondly, don't put a lid on your fee. You know, if that third person, that third party is dealing for you, they can ask, oh, have you got a budget in mind? Have you got a budget in mind? Guess what? They may come back saying something astronomical, which has happened. You know, and it's not, this business is not about ripping people off, ever. I don't want that ever to be what people think. It's about doing the best you can and getting the best rewards you can for a job that's bloody well done.
And you know, that's something that you've brought up there, and I completely agree. You know, there's a perception in the magic community that's almost holding people down, that, oh, you can't get more than this, you can't get more than this, you can't, you know, there's no way you can get this for a close-up job, and ultimately you get whatever it is that you want. You know, if you think you're worth it, then go out and ask for it. You know, if you don't ask, you won't get.
Yeah, and your time is more important than money. You can always earn more money, you can't get your time back. So think, when you're pricing a job, how long is it honestly going to take me to get ready, to prepare, to travel, to be there early, to perform, to, you know, reset your props, to break down if you have to, your staging if you're doing stage, to drive home. You know, there's 8 things I've just listed there that all should be charged for. You know, you're not just charging for your gig. Yeah. If you work out, if it's going to take me 8 hours and I'm earning 200 quid, well, guess what? Per hour, you're earning 200 quid divided by 8 hours.
Yeah. Very, very true. Very, very true. Let me ask you a question, Chris, before we finish this off. What's next? And this is a question I ask everyone I interview. But, you know, you've done so much in your career. You've literally traveled the world, performed on the biggest stages for the biggest clients, and you've achieved so much success doing so. If you decided to call it a day tomorrow, your legacy is set. Everybody will remember you for a very long time. And you've had more success outside of magic. Outside of, what I mean is outside of performing for magicians. There's some people who think of that are very successful performing for magicians. Although there's an element of that with you, you've had more success for the general public, which is great to see. Have you achieved everything? Is there anything left on your magical bucket list that you want to achieve? What goals? Where are you going in the future?
You should always have goals. The day you don't have goals is the day you die. You should always write your goals down. You should always work backwards. You know, these are things I live by, Craig. You can tell my passion for this is genuine. Yes, I'm working on this huge TV thing. That's next. But COVID has got in the way. You know, the producers heavily invested. We're talking millions of dollars. We've been so far in 5 locations just doing test footage. It's a concept that's never been done ever. I'm a part owner of it. That is my next step. I'd like to go back to working with Royal Caribbean. I headline for them frequently. I love the gigs. You're treated like a king. You perform in some of the greatest theatres I've ever seen, and that's wonderful. And I'm really excited about this gold rush that's coming, and it is coming. You know, in COVID, it's been hard. It's been hard mentally on all of us. I don't care where you're coming from. I don't care what you're doing. It's been hard. Let's be honest. What can we do to propel our progression the moment that starting gun is fired again? You know, we never have an excuse as magicians now to go, oh, I didn't learn the past because I didn't have time. Oh, I didn't read that book because I just don't have time. You've never got that excuse again in your life. You've never got an excuse to not have more skills now that can last the rest of your lifetime after this COVID period is done, because we've had this intense, almost claustrophobic experience that has had some value as well as the downside. So the TV, big theatre, big corporate, yeah, I want normality to come back. I'm craving it now. I'm feeling the effects mentally of not being in that huge auditorium again.
Yeah, I totally agree.
How have you found it, COVID, like the lockdown?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've been busier than ever before. Because we've still been my companies have still been doing virtual events, and we've just been just as busy doing that. We're now finding that, at least in the UK, the country's opening up and people are booking live events, and it's been, and obviously the YouTube channel. I've been ridiculously busy, but it's been great. I'm one of those people that has to stay busy. I can't just sit around and just vegetate in front of a TV for a few hours. It's just not me. It's just not something I can do.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for today. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope I've given value to people. I really sincerely hope that. And
this has been one of my favorite interviews, Chris. Out of all the interviews I've done 60 or 70 now on this channel. This has been one of my favorite interviews. You are absolutely amazing. And the advice that you have given, I want people to understand that you could watch anybody at any level in magic, not just in magic, to be honest, in business, but let's talk about magic. Anybody at any level, whether you're an amateur just starting, or you're a semi-professional wanting to go pro, or you're a professional, you've been doing it for a month, a year, 6 years, 10 years, however long. There are so many things that you have said that will help people. And I don't think anybody else that's been interviewed on this channel has given so graciously and said so much that can help so many people, genuinely.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. Those are really kind words. I want to leave with two things. I want to tell you about the Queen, because there's a very important lesson. I did entertain the Queen. I had a private audience with her. It was one of my finest moments in my career. I'm hugely proud. The reason I'm telling you that is because of the way it came about. I was doing a residency in a bar and grill in Wandsworth Common, and you never know who's in your audience, right? There's two old ladies there, and we were having such a good time. Magic breaks down barriers. It breaks down barriers of religion, class, culture. It brings us all together. Art unites, and we should always remember that. These ladies, at the end of it, turn and go, "Oh, Her Majesty would love this." Do you have a card? I'm like, all right, there you go. It's the most surreal thing I've ever heard. There you go. Can I have your details as well, please? Yeah, always get their information, always. On this occasion, she did contact me, and she said, "Oh yeah, the palace are interested. They'll be in touch." 2 weeks later, they're calling. They're literally, the Queen's aide is calling my mobile phone going, "We've heard about your act. We want to book you for the Queen." I'm like, great. They said there is a huge security protocol we need to go through. We need your passports. This is the date. You can't tell anyone about it until it's done. Blah, 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 blah. So I had to basically submit my passport for 2 weeks, go and do the gig. Craig, it was incredible. It was to this day, I'll never forget it. It was amazing. I was doing tables of 10. There was her, and she's there as a guest, and other people. And this bloke came over to me and goes, "Aren't you coming over to the royal table now? They're asking after you." And I'm like, "They're bloody eating their food." I said, "As soon as they're done, I'll be there," right? So I go over. Surreal is not the word. I had a blast. It was amazing. At the end of it, she just looked at me and she said, "It's impossible." And I, as long as I live, will never forget that moment. The lesson from that story: never disregard your audience. You never, ever know. They may not be dressed smartly. You may not be able to tell who they are or what they do. Treat people with kindness. Treat people with respect. Have fun, because they may give you the biggest gig of your career. Conversely, if you're an arse and you're Mr. Ego and you're like, "Well, if I'm not performing for the cleaner," someone might overhear that. You may have lost the biggest opportunity of your life. So that's my first story. The second one, very quickly to round it off, in Edinburgh last season. That's a couple of years ago now because of COVID, but So Ian McKellen came to my show and sat on the second row. And I'm like, oh my God, Gandalf. Gandalf is sat in my audience. I love this man. I love him. So there's a part of the act where somebody had to do a countdown. And so I got him to do it naturally. It was like 10, 9, and the Gandalf is brilliant. At the end of it, we met up, we had dinner. The nicest human being on planet Earth. So giving, so lovely. I said, what are you doing tomorrow, dear boy? I said, I'm free in the daytime. He says, be my guest at my show. So I go and I sit in his show. And he starts plugging my show in the middle of his act. My tickets went, but how kind. He didn't have to do that. He's Ian McKellen. He's like one of the biggest stars in the world. But how kind, considerate, ultimately lovely. So that's what I want to leave this interview with. Treat people with respect. It's about kindness. And it's also about being genuine. It's not about faking kindness. It's about really taking an interest in our art form, which we all love, in helping people and doing the best job that we possibly can.
What a way to round off this interview, Chris. That's the best advice anyone could ever say. It's 100% true. Be kind. I completely agree. Wow, blown away. Thank you so much for coming on the channel. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm going to put a link down below where people can go and buy the book. I am going to be reviewing it soon on the channel, but I encourage everyone to buy it. Chris, you're an amazing guy. You really are, and thank you for A, being so passionate about magic, and B, giving so freely on this interview. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Guys, leave a comment down below, because I'm sure Chris will see it, and you know, let us know in the comments down below how you found the interview. Don't forget to go check Chris out. I'll put your social media links, if that's okay, Chris, as well down here, and I'll put links to all of that. And I'm going to be back again tomorrow with another video. So I'll see you again tomorrow. Chris, thanks very much. You're amazing.